Meeting to order, Municipal Planning Commission. First things first, I guess what we'll do is agenda and additions approval. Is there any add-ons from Craig or Jacinta? Okay. Mr. Gender? I will after the agenda.
I'll put the motion for the agenda.
Okay. All those in favor? There you go. Thank you. At this point, what we'll do is we'll do a quick introductions, and we're going to start with Marlene Hansen.
Ernie Gender, board member, good afternoon.
Paul McKay, board member.
Larry Clark, board member. Justin Stevens, board member.
Les Duber, board member.
James Nyberg, board member and chair.
Craig Teal, director of Parkland Community Planning. Andrew Burshett, director of Municipal Services.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Services. Jacinta Donovan, Director of Planning Services.
Just back corner.
Ron Potter.
Mike Wayman, Becky Anderson.
Rich Fitzgerald, development officer.
Barry Green.
There we go. Okay, thank you and welcome everybody. And I'd just like to make a quick note. I'd like to congratulate Craig. He's going to be coming on with us full-time the end of November 1. So I know when I speak for the MPC board, we're very, very happy to have you come on board full-time, and staff was pretty happy to see you come on too, because I think there's lots of work for you to do. Okay. All right, minute approvals from our August 24th regular MPC. Anybody have any issues, errors, or omissions? Seeing none?
I'll give you approval for the minutes.
Awesome. All those in favor? That's carried. And so typically what we do at the MPC is we go through matters that are to be dealt with people that are here. So first on the list with people that are on here, Jacinta, can you help me out with who's representing what here?
Sure. We have 6.5.
6.5.
Ms. Anderson is here to speak to that application.
Okay.
6.6, Mr. Wengren is here.
Okay.
7.1,
Okay.
Mr. Lee is here. 7.2, Mr. Potter is here.
Okay.
And 9.1, Mr. Green is present.
Okay, so if it pleases the board, would you like to do it in that order? I'm seeing the nodding of heads. Okay, so we're going to go with 6.5, and who's taking that development permit? Okay, go ahead. Page 50 of your package for everybody that's looking.
The application is to consider a discretionary use development permit within the agricultural district. The applicant is proposing to install a manufactured home older than 10 years to 1993 on a 160-acre parcel on the northwest of 3721 west of the 4th. Section 92.3 of the land use bylaw provides for a manufactured home older than 10 years as a discretionary use in the agricultural district. Section 67.1 of the bylaw stipulates exterior photos of the home shall be submitted with the development permit application for a manufactured home older than 10 years in order to assess the compatibility of the home with surrounding development. The proposed location of the manufactured home complies with the minimum setback requirements of the agricultural district. So 4.1 lists the conditions that we are recommending to this application.
Page 50 of the package.
6.5.
6.5, page 50 of the package. Sorry, Marty. Are we there? Okay, thank you.
We have
Okay.
photos of the mobile home. Please.
Yeah. Mr. Stover?
Yeah. I will make a motion to approve with the conditions.
Any questions or concerns? I don't see any, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Pretty simple, thank you. Okay. We'll go on to 6.658 of our package. And who's taking this one? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to construct a 7.45 meter by 19.5 meter addition to the existing shop located on Lot 5, Block 1, Plan 22087, and to operate in an agricultural supply depot. The applicant operates a business selling spray nozzles, boom kits, flow meters, and other products related to agricultural land spraying. The majority of sales are done off-site with limited traffic generated to the location. Advertising will be an existing sign attached to the front of the building. Parking will be to the rear of the shop, and deliveries are made to the front where the two bay doors are located. There is outdoor storage of large storage tanks periodically. Access will be provided by the existing approach off of Highway 12. Due to the subject property being located within 300 meters of a provincial highway, an application has been submitted to Alberta Transportation for a roadside development. The addition will house extra storage and offices for new staff. Should be noted, this is not a change of use, but a change of owners. The new owner is the operator of the Ag Supply Depot, which has operated in this location for 5 years. The subject property is next to a tool and hardware shop and a tank business that has not been in operation for some time. So the proposed use should pose no challenges to adjacent properties. Water is provided by an existing water well, and wastewater is collected in a holding tank and then hauled to a treatment facility periodically. Recommendations, so 3.1 is to approve this discretionary use and with the conditions as noted. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Is there any questions or concerns, Mr.?
I'll move it as presented, please. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Go ahead.
I have one question for staff. How does this relate to our IDP that we're discussing? Because this existed prior to our update, water and septic service remains the same with a new permit? Is there any implications in that regard?
No off-site levy fee or anything, I don't think.
And we haven't updated the IDP, it's for
In progress?
Process of updating it, so nothing's changed in that regard.
We did have to refer this to the town for comment, and we never heard anything back. So we understand that is if we don't hear anything back, we assume that that's their approval. Silence is approval, I guess. It is subject to the conditions of the appearance of the outside of the building. But, the building, it fits that, the requirements for that.
Mr. Clark?
This is a very, like the existing business there now is a very well-stocked, very well-equipped business that's very busy at certain times of the year and has parts for, I think it's a gem in our area that really, for our farming community, I didn't realize it was there till this spring, and the parts I needed were there and very professionally treated. So I think it is a real asset to our community too.
Seeing no other questions or concerns, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Pretty simple. Okay, you can stick around and listen to all the other ones. Everybody runs out when we're done. Kind of boring, I guess. We're going to move on to 7.1, the subdivisions, and we're going to go to page 64 of your package. And who's taking this one?
That'll be me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, there we go.
So this application is for a second parcel out of a quarter section, as you can see, just located on the west side of Highway 56 and well north of the town of Stettler. This is a application that was previously presented to MPC and then brought back in terms of looking at possible changes to ER policies. Those changes to the ER policies, environmental reserve and the MDP, were recently dealt with by council, and that's why the application is now back before council.
But just a little bit of a recap, if we could go to the next image. Sorry, further on, please. Image. So this zeroes in on the parcel being created up in the very northwest corner of the quarter section was shown on the previous drawing. And it looks a little daunting when you see all the various lines drawn on this. One of the biggest challenges for this particular parcel was assessing whether or not there's a buildable site that has a chance of putting a dwelling on it to meet the requirements of the county's land use bylaw for placing a dwelling, plus meeting the requirements for private sewage and staying away from the environmental features, the ER around the west, south, and east side, but basically the little peninsula that you can see in the middle of where the house would go. So in that little red area that looks like the Florida Panhandle, if the ER policy had not been changed, that dedication or easement would have gone up to that red line. But with the recent changes to the MDP, there's the opportunity for the MPC not to require environmental reserve dedication, either endless land or as an easement, and leave the land into private ownership. Now, that doesn't mean you should go right up to the edge of the wetland for development, and you certainly can't go into the wetland without AEP approval for modification, but it does make that 100-foot area a little bit more usable. We also have a series of slopes that you can see showing up on this particular property, and fortunately that area of Panhandle is a more level area, and it's big enough to accommodate a future building site. Even with the red setbacks in place, it's more than 100 feet across, which if you think of a typical urban lot, at 50 feet, that's lots of space for a large range of building footprints and designs. Driveway most likely will come in from the very northwest corner, working with the contours to come down the slope. That being said, I think there is still a condition from Public Works Operations about brushing and making sure there's clear visibility. There's also the need to obtain more road widening along Township Road 41-2. So the recommendations, the conditions for this particular application, Mr. Chair, can be found on, just trying to get your right page 70. If we could jump back to that. And they include using a surveyed plan that is acceptable to land titles. And what that means in this particular case is that a surveyor will have to go around and follow and trace the edge of the wetland to make a determination under the Surveys Act about where the wetland begins, where the upland area begins. That means our total parcel area may be a little bit in flux here based on what that walk or that traverse is like at the end of the day. Certainly the settling up of taxes, which is typical. This, as a second parcel out, is subject to municipal reserve dedication. So first parcel outs, we're not allowed to require municipal reserve dedication. Second parcels, we are in areas such as this where we don't have any plans for any schools or future park space. The county's policy is to take money in lieu using a set formula and a value at $1,250 per acre. Based on the 10% area of the merge after the survey has done their work, that works out to around $453, you can see in condition number 3. Number 4 is the standard, making sure that you put up the correct county rural addressing bylaw signs once they're assigned to the property. And if we can go down the page a little bit for number 5. Well, I guess not quite, sorry for that. Number 5 is making sure we get an approach application. It's a farm approach at the northwest corner right now, and it may need some upgrades. That is the point of the approach application requirement. Sorry, if you can now go to the next page. And there's also the opportunity that approach may slide around, which is why 6 is worded the way that it is. Once that approach location is picked, that's the point where we want to have the measuring for the clear sight distance in both directions. And then finally, the road dedication I mentioned, it's split 50-50 with north side and south side. So around 5 meters comes off the south side, and that too will have an impact on that 3-acre parcel size, but it should still fit and make it to the land use bylaw minimum of 3 acres at the end of the day. So the recommendation, Mr. Chair, is for approval subject to those 7 conditions.
Okay. And Mr. Lee, you understand that lots of, they explain to you all the conditions that are in, and there's nothing you have any questions on? Okay, perfect. So, Mr. McKay?
I'll move that we accept the proposal with the conditions, following conditions.
Any questions or concerns, Mr. Gender?
Just like to have a little bit of clarification, because like on these, they say that 10% of the area of it you either donate it or you have to have in lieu of. Whose responsibility or whose choice is that? Like, where does it really lie on?
In terms of, if I understand the question is about the 10% municipal reserve dedication?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a policy that comes right out of your MDP. It says at second parcel out, the county's policy will be money in place of lieu. the ability to take it or to not take it, the first parcel out, flows from the MGA legislation. And then in the legislation allows the municipality to choose whether or not the MR is going to be 5%, 0%, or 10%, with 10% being the maximum allowed under the legislation.
So is this by choice by the municipality or by the landowner, like to be able to choose that? I just don't really see any real definite.
So the choice to take 10% municipal reserve dedication and to require money in lieu is the municipalities. When you look at the value, the 1250, county does have a policy, but we still need to have, that can only go one of two ways. It's either the applicant and subdivision authority, which is the county, agree on the use of that value, or the applicant can say, I think that value is wrong, and I wish to go get a market-based appraisal, which can be done. In my experience, though, that is the $3,000 question, and it may come back even higher than what the county's current agreed upon rate is. So there's a little bit of kind of joint decision making when it comes to agreeing to that value to do the calculation. So you can see there's like 4 different items in the formula that are moving at once. In the condition, one of their expectation of legislation is we can't just say blank amount of money. We're expected to very clearly articulate a dollar figure so the applicants can see what very clearly they're being expected of.
I guess the part that would scare the out of me is say like, okay, with market value compared to assessment, or like the value that the county's putting in now. You would really want to open that can of worms.
Well, to open that would cost you, one, you have to go to your appraiser, and appraisals are not cheap anymore. So that's right off the hop, and there's a possibility. So the rules are purposely set when that appraisal is done. It's supposed to be the raw land value as if the use is approved. So it'd be coming back most likely higher than the agricultural land value.
Thank you.
That answered your question, Mr. Jenner?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions and concerns? I'm seeing none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay, there you go. Here's your donuts or something to keep people around. I don't know. All right, we're at 7.2 and page 83 of our package. Who's taking this one?
Will be me again.
Okay.
So just a little farther to the south and along Highway 56, and you can see in the drawing that Andrew's brought up, it's a proposal to create a second parcel under the core section, directly below the existing parcel that's been taken out. It's approximately a little over 9 acres in size and does contain 2 wetland areas. So very similar to the previous application. This application also was, I think, not brought before MPC, but it was held back, anticipating that MDP policy to make a change on environmental reserve dedication. Because if we go to the next image, it shows some setback distances, or I guess we didn't include that. Those 2 wetlands that you see, if we applied a 100-foot setback from each of them, wouldn't leave much of a building area. Again, this is an area where we don't have any plans for public open space or a park system. And the wetlands administration's perspective can be left in the hands and management of the property owner, much like they were without being subdivided. Again, it's not a license to go right to the wetland. That too is subject to Alberta environment policies and approvals. So a dwelling site should be placed a little bit farther beyond the edge, but not necessarily the 100 feet that the other policies would have required if not adjusted. The application does meet all other aspects of the MDP, and the LUP is certainly sizable enough. Other key aspects for this is the setback from Highway 56 for any development. It does kind of push the development in at least 30 meters in from the edge of Highway 56, but still leaves the east part towards the middle there where you see some of the vehicle tracks coming in and circling up, kind of literally right towards the middle, towards on the east side. A suitable area to do a building placement and location in that general vicinity. The other interesting aspect of this development is being directly off Highway 56 and sharing the access with the remnant parcel in the very southwest corner, I guess. Alberta Transportation has indicated they require a 30-meter service road dedication using what they call a service road agreement. So those words are a little bit cumbersome. Dedication suggests that you're giving up the land, but that's not what they mean in this case. They mean putting a legal instrument on title that allows them to have a 30-meter area in the future if they so choose. It doesn't mean that a service road has to be built immediately, but it's kind of a form of an easement agreement that allows the remnant, the owner of the remnant and the owner of the acreage to share that as an access point to the highway. So if we can scroll to the conditions page, this one too.
Yeah. Craig, on that diagram that we just had up in front of us, that is why that wedge is left out of that subdivision at the very bottom.
Can we go to the other drawing that shows the full quarter? No, so I think you're referring to the area directly, it was hovering over right now. I think maybe the applicant can speak to that. I think the intent was to capture and share the access point as a shared point, and then just create enough for the acreage as opposed to completely cutting off the remnant from legal access to Highway 56. So what you're seeing is a little bit of an example of the legal access to the remnant per meter parcel is off 56 by that little panhandle. But the physical access is where you see the actual driveway, which seems to be approximating almost a 50-50 split along the south property boundary of the proposed parcel. And what AT is saying is we'd like to have a 30-meter stretch across that new proposal parcel being created, so that if that ever had to be a service road, they could acquire the land and have a service road built. And I believe underneath that should be mostly a treed panhandle. But again, maybe the applicant can speak to that a little bit directly. The conditions for this one, Mr. Chair, are relatively straightforward. It's the survey drawing, the taxes. It is a second parcel out, so much like the previous application, it's subject to the reserve dedication policies at 10%, with the agreed upon value of $1,250 per acre, which in this case translates to around $1,167 contribution from this reserve dedication. Addressing, and then number 5, the condition is the service road agreement that Alberta Transportation requires, which is a standard template that's available on their website.
Okay. Mr. Potter, did you want to just comment on that driveway? Is that the intent to have access to both the, I am assuming this is staying within the family kind of thing anyways?
No, it is. That was the intent, was to provide a place for my daughter and son-in-law. It's got nothing to do with cash value, and so quite a bit of what's covered I have some issue with. But first off, yes, to answer your question, I understood that we would be surveying the acreage so that the south boundary would be in essentially the center of the approach, so there was access, and so the balance there would still stay with the quarter. But I'm rather confused as to what the Department of Transportation is needing if that was the case.
Well, if I'm right, Craig can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can do that how you like, but there will be a caveat on in the future when we all cease to exist and somebody else owns this property, that if they are two separate parcels, two separate entities, that if there's a fight between those two parcels, Alberta Transportation can put a service road in and make it happen so that it's there. Is that correct?
Pretty much. So this does go on title until such time as AT makes that kind of determination. It could sit there for many years.
So basically, it's just a caveat sitting on there that if they have to pull the trigger and settle the dispute, they can.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Gender?
I guess I had very much the same concerns on this one here, like with the cash and lieu and everything else. But being that Craig was able to explain it, because I thought I was looking at if this my own property, I would kind of question, okay, that north little part in there, that 0.9 acres, if you take it off and left it as a reserve, it would be, no one could really use it. But it's been totally explained by Mr. Craig.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just clarification on page 84, I believe we have a slight error. It labels the parcel size as 6.04 hectares that are potentially subject to this reserve policy. I just want to clarify that should be acres, because that's a pretty substantial financial difference
Mr. Chair, that is quite correct. That is a typo from acres to hectares. It should be acres.
That was a pretty big one of my
Okay.
concerns. The other,
Go ahead, Ms. Potter.
the other concern I would have on the rural development fund is that it states that there's 6 acres. If you were to bring up the satellite on that, on your screen, there's one that's enlarged. I don't know if you got it there. If, and 9 acres, over 9 acres, if you could find 6 acres out of that, it states that it's high agricultural value. And I would question whether you could find even close to that.
I think that's the terminology, but Craig, we'll let you go ahead.
So I think they're referring to the paragraph is about the Rural Development Fund is on page 86. And so in interpreting council's policy on that, staff are saying the intent of the policy to go or to face the $1,000 payment per acre over a 5-acre parcel is intended to make people think about how much agricultural land they're taking out of production. It doesn't matter whether or not it's good, low, medium quality agriculture. It's agricultural land, period. What we're suggesting in that paragraph is that the wetlands that are within the parcel really aren't the agricultural land and weren't really the intent of the policy. So we're suggesting that out of the 9 or plus or minus acres that are involved in the parcel, first a credit should be applied for the ER area, which we have used through GIS calculations to figure out how that drops down to around the 6.04 acres. And then all 5-acre parcels are exempt under the policy. And that's how we arrive at the remainder of the 1.04 acre for the calculation.
And so to say that it's high value agriculture, we find in the county of Stellar, all agricultural land to be a high value to our community. So that's where the terminology comes in. Go ahead, Mr. Stephen.
Removing, I think it's 3.3 acres that's considered wetland. That's something that we've pretty consistently done on these applications, and I think that's a good policy I'd like to carry on.
So do you understand when we're saying high, it's not changing the value of the property, it's just a statement of label that we put on it. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
I don't think I do.
Okay, there we go.
Forward as presented, please.
Okay, with the conditions?
With the conditions.
No questions, concerns, seeing none? All those in favor? That's carried. There we go. Okay. And again, you're welcome to stick around and follow with them. We're going on to 9.1 and page 114. Everybody to catch up, and then who's taking this one?
Chairman,
Thank you. So this application was presented to the Municipal Planning Commission in March 2022. And a variance was granted to the front yard setback for an ancillary building from 25 feet to 10 feet. The slope assessment report was obtained and provided to the county as the toe of the slope is greater than 15% grade. So we, and since then, the applicant has contacted a contractor, and they have determined that the excavation at the toe of the slope would mean a 5-foot depth, and in order to reduce that, the applicant is requesting that that variance be reduced to 3 feet in order to drop that excavation depth to 2 feet by the excavation point. So we are showing, and it's also to be noted that there is a lot of vegetation in the road allowance at this time. So the image shown, the aerial image shows that cul-de-sac area. As well, we have done a sketch illustrating the amount of tree cover on the property. And the land use bylaw section 109.12 stipulates that 50% of the tree coverage or shrub coverage must remain. So by removing portion of trees that's required for the garage, we are down to an 18% variance would be required in order to reduce that coverage from 50% to, and I don't have the amount in there, but yeah, it's 920 square meters is the total area that would be equivalent. And we are at 780 square meters with the trees that would be removed for the provide for the garage. So the section 23.1 stipulates the development authority may decide on a development permit application that does not comply with the bylaw. If in the opinion of the Municipal Planning Commission, development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the proposed development conforms to the use prescribed in the bylaw. So the setback would require 88% variance from the 25 feet to 3 feet in order to provide for the proposed location of the garage. The applicant is here, as you know, if you have any questions regarding this request.
Okay, any questions or concerns? Go ahead.
Is the application also to include a second approach
Yes,
based on this?
Yes, and the
site plan does show the site where they're proposing to put the second approach. My apologies, yes, that was brought forward as well. As the contractor determined the second approach would be more feasible for access than the original access from the existing approach. The Operations Department did approve the location of the second approach initially, and then the proposal was brought in to reduce the setbacks, so we brought it back to the Municipal Planning Commission for consideration of those two changes to the site plan and the site coverage for the trees.
So where is the second approach going to be?
There's another map. Andrew, do you have the second site plan?
Just tell me about from here, so that on page 119, where it says 35 McDonald Drive, I see the red line with the approach, and then it looks like it's the whole front of that is open. I'm not sure if that's going to be, is it approach in the center of that? Or?
It is approximately in the center of that area where you're seeing that tree coverage. And a lot
And
of
all that's going to be taken out as far as the planning.
most of the vegetation has been removed. It's just some green was forming, just some Saskatoon berry bushes and a few other low trees and shrubs has been removed.
Go ahead.
A couple other follow-up questions. To me, based on the signs in the area, it looks like there's utilities in that ditch as well, both gas and telephone buried, which would be on the east side of that road that we're encroaching on. And I guess my questions are to Public Works. If we allow this variance to close in on that property line, A, do we have sufficient maintenance access to these utilities? And B, I don't know, we're building a garage 3 feet from the boundary. The only way this new approach can be used is if you're backing out blind onto a road. And I'm not sure if that's safe without, we're talking about a variance on trees already without clear cutting a long ways for sightlines. Then I think we may run into the cascading snowball effect of side effects.
Mr. Green, do you have any comment on that?
It's at the end of a dead-end road, basically. It's a cul-de-sac. Traffic on a busy weekend is probably 1,000 vehicles, maybe. And in the winter, very few.
Unfortunately, where we're set out on this is we have to look into the future, what comes down 25, 30 years from now, because it's no good for us to leave a problem for our future board members. Mr. Gender, you had a question?
Okay, the dimensions of this, is it a garage?
Yes.
Okay, the dimensions are, I'd like to know like what the dimensions are, how you're going to be approaching into this garage, whether it's off of the road, whether it's gonna be kind of in off the side.
The original plan was to come in off the side, but the existing approach is quite narrow, and as soon as you hit the approach, you're going uphill. So in order to get into the side of the garage, I would have been coming at it up and at an angle down to get to that garage. It just wasn't gonna work, especially in the winter time. To widen that existing approach would require the removal of about 8 or 9 trees, fairly large trees that are on the road allowance. Where I'm proposing to put the new approach, it's already cleared. It's 20 feet wide there right now. Because the previous owner was using it to park a boat trailer in there.
It's likely that you could come in onto the new approach and then you'll be turning left into the garage.
It's a little bit to the left. Yeah, is there a lot?
There is some, on page 120 shows the approach, the proposal, new approach location. And then the next page shows the view towards the east, the south.
I guess, yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess my take on this is if you're looking at the garage, it'll be in a 5-foot cut. If you cut out some of that, moved it say like downward on the slope as a fill in for the garage. Like I'm not in favor of say like bringing it any closer to say like where the boundary is now, but can you work it by cutting it and laying it down over onto a fill side?
The biggest concern was it gets very steep from that one corner where they would have to dig down 5 feet. The concern was the slope sloughing while it was open to excavation.
If you've got a steep slope, I'm just kind of wondering, okay, whereabouts is your steepest part of the slope and could you maybe use that as a basis and then start from there?
I'm not getting what you're like.
Okay, on there, like you've got a gradual slope, and then is there also an inclination in there? Or it inclines quite a bit to the 5 feet, or is it a gradual slope?
It's gradual till it gets about 10 feet away, and then it starts going up quite a bit to that 5-foot depth that we have to.
I guess,
Right now, the corner closest to the road is 5 feet lower than the back corner. It's up against the toe of the slope.
I guess I'm just kind of wondering on whether you can crowd it, maybe take it up a little bit further up the slope, utilize some of that cut that you would be using from that, and then backfilling down onto the lower slope to keep it a little further away.
So Mr. Gender, I don't think that is necessarily the concern as much as the sloughing of the slope after they've died. They have no issues with the digging of it, I don't think, or the adding to it. I think where they're having the concern is after they're done, the remainder being an issue of sloughing onto, he builds a garage and then he's got a wall of dirt that hits his garage later on. I think that's where the issue is. So to alleviate that, they'd have to cut even further back to the point where they're putting the garage in. So, I mean, there is definitely ways of dealing with it with a retaining wall or a pony wall or something like that. But I think that's what they're trying to avoid, if I'm correct on that. It's not about the actual excavation and building. And I know what you're saying, take the hill, fill the hole, Bob's your uncle. I don't think that's the case. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
We, originally, we granted a variance to the setback. Can you refresh my memory what that variance was last time?
Yeah, 10 feet, from 5 to 10.
That's a 63%.
Variance percentage.
So we went from 25 to 10, and now the proposal is to go down from 10 to 3.
Yeah.
Well,
And I will make my comment on this. I have a hard time doing that. I think we've made a decision on this, and I feel for you, Mr. Green. I understand the cost of constructing on unlevel ground is something that is tough to deal with. But unfortunately, again, we're at that situation where we have to look at the whole of the county going forward. It can't be, what's today's date, how it looks, what do we see for a vision going forward? So we put these policies in place. I'm at a position right now where I would be saying, no, I'm not in favor of granting any more of a variance. Like I said, there are ways to mitigate that with a poning wall or a retaining wall. There is stuff that you can do to make that work. So I'm even having a second approach bothers me, but that's already been dealt with. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I'd like to make a motion that we not increase the variance to the setback. Where I'm at on this is, I understand completely your concern about this 5-foot cut and stability and trying to make this safe. My concern is 10 years from now, when we have to do utility work, now we're dealing with a 5-foot cut and 3 feet of room to work with. So we're dropping in shoring boxes and everything else to create access. So I appreciate the problem you're running into, but I don't want to make it a county taxpayer problem down the road potentially. So I guess the way my motion will move forward, that we not increase the variance on the setback. If Public Works or planning staff is satisfied with the safety of the second approach, I can live with that, but we not increase that variance to.
I think the second approach was already approved on the first.
I'm bringing it back.
Okay, so it'll come as a separate application.
No, if you could make that decision today, it's part of the site plan that was submitted to the
Okay.
second.
Okay. So right now, your motion is to deny the setbacks, and then we will deal with the approach later. Or part of this.
My motion is that planning staff or Public Works have to determine that this approach is safe sightline wise, which we commonly do with all of our approaches.
Okay, so going forward, what I'd like to see us do then is, let's clean this up. We will make a motion on this, and we will make a decision on that, and then we will make a second motion to determine the issue of the second approach, okay?
Site plan with the second approach,
Right.
and also tree coverage.
Okay, so right now, the motion on the table is what we're gonna go with is not to allow an extra setback to what we already have. So basically, everything stays.
It looked like Craig was kind of.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have to give some thought to the motion on how to deal with this application. It may be better if they have that many questions, and it's critical, you don't have a site plan in front of you to maybe table it.
For the approach? Yeah, okay, we can do that. That can come back as a separate application. Okay.
The applicant has to grant MPC an additional time, but it may be better than deal with the refusal.
Right, fair enough. Okay, so the motion on the table is not to grant.
Not to increase the variance on the setback.
Okay, you got that, Marlene? Everybody on the board clear what we're voting on? Okay, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Okay, and I as well am in favor of that. So now, Mr. Green, to that end, what we'll do is we'll have that application come back with a application to have that second approach with a site plan. I'm not that isn't as big a concern for me, especially with that we're not granting that extra lenience, but you can deal with Jacinta on that and go from there. Okay? But the only thing that you will have to do is grant us, like Craig said, there will be a little bit of timeline. We have to make a decision. If we have to make it within a short period of time, it's not going to be anything, but if you can wait a few, then it'll make it work. Okay, there you go. Okay. Okay, we're good? Simple as that. Then we are going to go back up to 5.1 in the development officer's report.
Thank you.
For our development permit stats, we are at 98 permits for this year. And in 2021, we had processed 123 applications. So just about 25 applications less than we were at this time last year. Subdivisions, we are at 12. 2022, and in 2021 we had 22, so 10 less. So a little bit less activity this year than what we had seen last summer. As far as for the past week, Rich attended Development Officers Conference in Camrose from the 21st to the 23rd. Robin and I were at the conference on Thursday. And it was a very interesting conference. We had a lot of good presentations, and Rich has summarized some of the presentations for us, so he can just give us a little report on that.
So that's Robin, our bylaw officer?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. You got to, she's fairly new, I'm not sure if they're. Go ahead, Rich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of highlights of it instead of going through each keynote speaker. It was a 3-day conference. Friday was about a half day or so. But some of the speakers that really stood out to me, Mr. Simon O'Byrne, he's a planner. He's worked all over the world, and some of his claims to fame are some of the small incremental changes that they've implemented in areas where they had huge issues that the proposed solution to those issues were well outside of what the community could afford, and they were able to solve those issues using small incremental changes. So
you got an example?
So he spoke specifically about Philadelphia. They had a huge stormwater management issue where huge parts of the city were flooding, and due to, the infrastructure is very old, and they were looking, I forget the numbers, but I'll just say $25 billion to update their infrastructure to accommodate this. Of course, that was well outside of the money that they had to spend. So he got involved, and instead of updating the stormwater management system, they decided to design the roads with a boulevard that had grass and other vegetation in there that would slow down the flow of the water, and of course it would absorb it a lot quicker. So in doing that change, they cut the cost of the infrastructure upgrades to less than $1 billion, and it solved the issue. And he listed lots of other ideas and things that he has used, but that one kind of stood out to me. Like I said, it was very, very educational. Some of the other ones that really stood out, the land surveyor that spoke, I really enjoyed his presentation. There was a lot of information jumped into, I think he said a 3-day presentation that he compressed into about an hour and a half. So it was a lot of information to take in. But some highlights of that were the importance of having a survey document, like a survey done on a property, and the fact that a lot of people will come in, even with us, and buy an aerial photo of their property that has the property lines overlaid on it, and those may or may not be accurate. So it just really spoke about the importance of getting the survey done. And another one, we had Alifia Ghulam Hussein. I hope I didn't butcher her name too bad, but she spoke about the development permit process, timelines, what deems a development permit application complete. That was really really helpful for myself, being fairly new to this field. And Kelsey Becker Brooks spoke about enforcement of legal non-conforming uses. As we know, we see things like that fairly often, so it was nice to get a legal perspective as to what's required and, you know, what, when we go to court, how a development officer has to be prepared with the information and everything that we have. We had a bear pit session with both Alethea and Kelsey, and that's where everybody put their questions on a piece of paper and they randomly picked them through. And so that was really good to hear some of the issues that other people are running into. And then on Friday, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name, Zygmunt Sadorowski. He was also a surveyor that teaches.
Nodding, you did pretty good.
Yeah, he's a land surveyor, but he also teaches at the NATE, I believe it is. And he went through how to properly read a land title certificate, and that was hugely enlightening for me, because you know, land titles, it gets pretty confusing trying to go through and understanding what's the difference between a joint tenement and a leasehold land title. And you know, so that hour and a half with him, believe it or not, I actually answered a question I've had since I was in college about land titles. That the 2 years I was there, I never did get a straight answer, and he was able to clarify the question I had in about 2 minutes. So, this guy really knows his stuff, and it was really a really great opportunity to hear what he had to say and learn a bit from him. Yeah, that's about it.
Well, worth it then if you got a age-old question answered. Okay. Anything else from your side, Jacinta?
Well, I think Rich just covered what we attended on Thursday, and that was the bear pit session, and Alethea and Kelsey, both of their presentations, which was very, very enlightening. Some of the other items that came out was from the Alberta Utilities Commission, whereas the anyone applying for a solar farm or data plus, the first stop obviously is at the AUC, and how the municipality should be involved and advise of any conditions that we would like to see for reclamation, for example, noise, because our application or our permit cannot be more onerous than what AUC is requiring. So those things should be identified. And I've never seen an application come in yet to this day from AUC. I don't know. I know we had several applicants that had submitted. So that's something we should probably look into, is when does the municipality become involved in that process?
I guess the question I would ask in that, who determines whether it's more onerous or not? Some people would think that just filling out a piece of paper with us versus dealing with AUC is more onerous, but I guess there's somebody out there that has to make that determination, right? Okay, is there anything else?
Forbearance agreements, which allows to continue non-compliance while the permits are being processed. I don't think we've done any of those types of agreements in the past, but that's something that was new to I hadn't been aware of that possibility of, allowing that to happen. And as well, the restrictive covenants, and I know they are a private planning tool. A lot of developers feel that we're responsible for enforcing, unless it's linked to our bylaw, which a lot of the restrictive covenants are. When the current bylaw was written, we did research all the restrictive covenants and included it in the bylaw, our land use bylaw. So those are things that just stood out for me. It's it was a very good. We definitely had a full day of very informative presentations and discussions with others.
A little taste of the restricted covenants when we were doing some development at the lake. We talked about it, but I don't know if it really went anywhere. Okay, and Craig, do you have anything to put you on the spot?
Nothing for the development officers.
Okay, any questions? See none, can I get a receive for information?
Yeah, I will receive.
All those in favor? Ernie's waving over there. Hey, wait. Hey, development permit 6.1, page 8 of your package.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will be for me. So if I had to pick a gravel pit to work in, I think this would be it. It's almost not fair to call it a gravel pit. It's up on an escarpment with an awesome view of the Meeting Creek River Valley and actually the Battle River Valley a little farther to the east. So pretty scenic for a gravel pit. The application is, if you can scroll to, sorry, Andrew, I'll probably help with your plan. There's a lot of pages in this particular application. The more interesting one will start on 28, I think, or sorry, my mistake, 27. We'll do the trick. So this particular application is for a gravel pit that stretches over 3/4 sections. It's a direct access. It's off Highway 53. It's perched at the top of the escarpment overlooking the Meeting Creek ravine. As you can see, Meeting Creek ravine snaking its way through in the south part of that air photo. The gravel pit area is outlined in yellow. So spanning those 3/4 sections and goes over an undeveloped county road allowance, which was addressed between the county and the applicant quite a while ago. This particular proposal is for mining what remains in this area, and there's only about a meter wide, a meter depth of material left that the applicant feels is economical to extract. So there is still an extraction activity that would occur kind of across the entire surface, kind of a skimming. The site is also used to stockpile gravel being brought in from other locations, and it may be crushed there and stockpiled and then hauled off site by multiple operators. So that's why it's needed for both definitions of both excavation and processing are required to cover off what the applicant is interested in doing. The interesting aspects of the development are the two residents that are within 400 meters, one directly to the north, kind of the midpoint of the area development, the other one kind of off towards the northeast direction in the eastern part. To address the impacts of those, the Triton Environmental did a report on both noise and particulate and dust generation, largely from the crushing activity. And that would largely take place in the middle quarter section on the screen at a distance, a little bit farther down from kind of in the south half of that yellow development area as opposed to the north half, closest to the housing. So the reports indicate that noise and particulate matter does leave the property and almost makes it to the edge of the residence. And that is based on a combined factor of where the crusher actually is that's generating most of that dust and what kind of mitigating factors are applied at the time to reduce that impact. So the report talks about, they never expressly say you should keep the crusher here, but the staff were saying that is part of the how they arrived at the conclusions. And if you study where the point source of the noise or the generation of the dust, you can't really move that closer to the sensitive item that you're trying to protect. In this particular case, so it is a function of where that activity is happening. It's also a function of what kind of mitigation measures of watering, in this particular case, being one of the measures, or reducing the level of drop materials as it's going through the truck crusher is another one of the measures, or watering the truck route in and out of the crushing area is another measure to reduce both the dust, most of the dust aspects, and the noise can be through baffles or times of operation. The other interesting thing I draw to note about this gravel operation compared to others is that historical resource impact assessment has been done, and there is a do not disturb area right in the middle. If we can scroll down a couple drawings, it should come up. Andrew, thank you. So that red hatched area that you see showing up on the screen, and the purple underneath is the yellow outlined area we were looking at just in the previous drawing, is where Alberta Culture and Status of Women has indicated that there should be no further excavation or disturbance in that area due to the presence of archaeological resources. So the proposed conditions for the development permit reflect that as well. We can scroll to the conditions. We'll just quickly go through some of those. So the first one, the nature of the use, just to make sure we're talking about it, is the two uses that are being approved, both gravel, sand and surface mineral excavation and sand and surface mineral processing. Expected to stay within the boundaries of the big yellow area. And you're expected to follow through on the grading points you see there, which really come from the operating report that's submitted as part of the application. We can scroll to the next, please. There are a few, key one here. Number two, in terms of the length of time for this application, administration is recommending 10 years. Again, given the it does seem like the issues can be managed. The starting point in the land use bylaw is a 5-year time frame, but it does allow the opportunity to extend that period. And we have no concerns with the 10-year period, recognizing that at any point, if there's an issue of non-compliance, we can move to enforcement. Or if there's a lapse of an AEP approval, that would automatically extinguish this permit, which is another condition further down. But there are a series of prior to issuance conditions. I'm not sure if we can show those all on the screen at once. There we go. Some of these are already taken care of. 4 and 5, there is a sign, but just to make sure, the follow-up is to make sure the sign has the information that we're looking for on it. And there certainly the site is fenced and has appropriate warning signs and traffic signs to inform people that they're entering into a gravel pit. Number 6 is a kind of standard for everyone to make sure that they settle up with the community aggregate payment levy bylaw and make sure their account is in good standing before they get to actually have their development permit and move on. And then we get into conditions 7 to the end that are of a continuing nature as they go through the full length or 10 years of the permit. These are always there as a background expectation. That includes the 2 4 hours of operation. It's still split between excavation and processing and hauling and loading of gravel in case there's a difference of time. In this case, there isn't. There's number 9, a requirement that as the time goes by annually, we're looking for reporting under the community aggregate levy bylaw. So we're going to scroll down a little bit, Andrew. And number 10 starts giving you a sense of what is required in those annual reports. In this particular case, given the timing, it actually will be around this time next year that their annual report will be done. Mr. Chair, I'm not sure if you want to pause for questions or now or go all the way through. Mr. Jenner has it.
Okay, it's up to you, Craig, you can go ahead.
Okay, with the cap levy, is it only with material mined within? It's not to be hauled. Anything hauled in is exempt.
That's correct.
I think Andrew can speak to it a little bit more. I'll just buy him some time. I'm assuming it's you only pay once.
Yeah, it's paid on removal from the site that it was mined. If you stockpile and then remove, that's not applicable to the levy.
In this particular case, Mr. Chairman, the material supplied by the consultant on behalf of the applicant probably should be refined to say on that nice drawing we were looking at earlier, it shows all the existing stockpiles. It doesn't say whether or not they're from this pit or where they're part of the moved in material. So hopefully on their annual report and their reporting format, they will actually make that distinction. Otherwise, they do run the risk of being taxed twice. Sorry, my mistake.
They'd be
Levied twice. They'd be dinged twice for the bill. Number 11 is their standard that you are expected to have your AEP approval, and that may change from time to time, but at all times you either have to have one that's in place, and if it doesn't, this permit automatically gets suspended as well. In terms of dealing with the offsite impacts, the first couple are generic. They're purposely written generic to be performance oriented, that if we find that something's just not suitable, we'll show up and there's a big dust plume that's surrounding the neighboring house, you can expect a phone call. Or if we're standing at the house, the noise is unbearable, you can also expect a phone call as the applicant to moderate your behavior. We are very clearly, though, in number 14 saying the crushing activity and why we're accepting the results of that environmental report are based in part on where the crushing was taking place. That's why we have the distances to say to be able to replicate those results in the future, you need to replicate where the modeling took place. And then number 15 flows on to say these are some of the items that coming out of that report that we think are reasonable to implement to deal with those. Roll on a little bit, please. Number 16 and 17, even though we're directly off the highway, we've left the road agreements in place in case the final destination is actually a landing on a county road somewhere. It could be that they're on Highway 53 and they're heading due west and off the Flagstaff they go. We can continue on. And signage is just doubling up to make sure that all these things are already in place, but to make sure they just don't disappear over the life of the period, the bid, to make it very clear that that security issue for public safety is an ongoing item. It's not only at the time of application. Roll on, please. And yeah, number 21, making sure you keep it nice and tidy. You're not allowed to also get rid of a bunch of old car bodies at the same time once you're doing your excavation or filling back in the hole. And numbers 22 and 23 dealing with reclamation. If your permit is suspended or we reach the end of the 10-year period, the expectations for the reclamation plan, which are also part of the development permit, do continue to be enforced, and you're expected to follow up on that. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to field any questions about the application or the conditions.
So I do have one question, and one of the ones that we had a recent decision, and there was some question, I think, around weed control, and then in that decision, did they not say that we have other mechanisms to deal with the weed control? So we really couldn't put it as an application, but not that there's an issue with this. This is a phenomenal, this operation looks like Wishart County pits looked as well as this, but from what I'm seeing, it looks like very, very few weeds in this.
The local cows that were in there were doing a pretty good job. They have a lot of territory to cover in this particular case. And I think that, yes, that was a conclusion that you have other tools and mechanisms that you can deal with in terms of nuisance property.
Okay. I would like to see somewhere along the lines that we have some more teeth in the fact that we talked earlier at the Ag Service Board meeting about having, maybe a program that all our gravel pits could follow in that are operating within the county of Stettler, to including our own, to mitigate that weed issue that we have. And if we started a program that they were complied to participate in that program versus going through the onerous task of a stop work order or weed notice or whatever the case may be. So I'm not sure if we can in the future do something along that lines. That might be for another time, but go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Andrew, do you mind bringing up the map from, I think, page 26? So my question is regarding condition number 19. So securing a fence along the development permit area. Can you tell me if that is that
Case. I'm not sure I did see a fence along that side. Can we go to the
and I guess I can expand a little bit on the direction I'm going. We talk about erosion control and buffers along the roadways and everything else. What makes this particular development unique is that waterway and that valley. If you do not have some sort of buffer or setback along that edge, you disturb it, it's gone. No amount of, and that change could be excavation along that edge or stockpiling materials right along that edge. There's no, if you got 40 feet high of topsoil, say, piled up along that edge, there's no amount of silt fence you can put to protect that afterwards.
So would that be part of their Alberta environmental application? That erosion control is typically on that side of the gate, not on our side of the gate.
Well, generally it's pretty generic, but because we're talking about quarter sections not adjacent to a river.
No, but I guess I can't speak with authority on it, but I am assuming that Alberta Environment has taken that into play on this. I would think, I don't know.
I think we'd have to acquire, I think they may have just applied the traditional 3-meter undisturbed buffer and may not have been terribly concerned about any undermining going down. In some ways, this operation has kind of been scraping off the top of the hill. But I do get the point that if you have a unstable slope and you change the weight bearing on it, you can create a problem. Probably the only saving grace on this is they also own the property that's going to receive the problem. Until they actually get in trouble for now causing something that interrupts with the creek down at the very bottom. That'll be yet another interesting inquiry. Circling back to the fence, I think we probably do have to look at that condition because no, along the escarpment itself, that side is open for the cattle to be able to go down the side. So that may be a little bit onerous. And it may already be the escarpment enough, maybe enough to be the deterrent for the safety that we're looking for.
Definition of a secure fence. I'm not really sure if it's going to be a cattle fence or like with their, Justin is saying it's going to be a silt fence.
I think when we put that in condition, Mr. Chairman, we were looking at even a barbed wire fence will work. The idea is some sort of barrier or notice it's not necessarily 100% keep them out, so it's not the security fence for the penitentiary. It's enough to say that here's enough warning that you shouldn't be crossing this line. That's really what it's doing. But it can't just be a strand of barbed wire that parts are up, parts are down. It's got to be visible. It's got to do the trick in that respect. So no fence, especially in a rural setting, if it's barbed wire, is going to be like a complete deterrent, which I'm sure you're quite familiar with.
So to move this application forward with that condition, that the fence covers the property boundaries, it doesn't have to cover
Not the ravine side.
yeah, so if it covers the property boundary, not the,
I think it's for the
service.
the development area.
Yeah, not the development area, but the property boundary is secured, then I don't know, since they own the property, if you have now got onto the property and then got onto like it's having a double fence there, and I don't necessarily think we need that. If they have the property boundary secured, I think that would be sufficient enough. I'm not sure what's board members' feelings. Go ahead.
So we're going to decide the property boundary as the site or the whole quarter? Is that
That's what I'm saying, is I think it should be the whole quarter. If it's fenced and they own the quarter, then there is no issue, right? It's the actual property, the ownership of it, I guess, is where this actually.
As long as every access indicates that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'm not confident saying that there'd be a fence at the quarter section line down at the bottom of the ravine. So if there's a concern about it, it may be just better to say you'll fence where you can at the upper part at the top of the ravine, on the west boundary, the north boundaries, and basically every area that's exposed except for the ravine side, something to that effect.
Does everybody feel comfortable with that? Okay.
like the reclamation costs, not our monkey?
Mr. Chair, historically, I guess we've chosen not to take ownership of that particular monkey and circus. When we've talked about that before, and we've the group has opted to leave that in the hands of the province rather than having to step in. Your bylaws does certainly allow you that prerogative. However, it does mean you have to hold money in trust and also be responsible for managing it. The nice thing about the AEP approach is they already have a built-in 5-year top-up or true-up process where they can call your permit if you don't make up the difference. And it looks like what I read in the background is they're in that process now, and that AEP will most likely be closing the gap on that security, or you're not going to have your AEP approval. If you don't have your AEP approval, you don't have our development permit.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that
Oh, no, I don't want the power. With great power comes great responsibility, and I don't want that.
That'd be up, see, like with the cap levy and all the others. Gee,
Yeah, you true it up every 5 years. I want to true it up every year. Okay, any questions, concerns? I need a motion on this if we're going to move forward. Okay,
I'll make that motion that we accept it with the conditions. Recommendations.
and the change of condition 6, is it, or which one is it?
I believe it was 19.
That's it. Okay. Perimeters and development area, yeah. That's all that.
Sure, you particularly a little bit of a poetic license on how to word the changes to 19.
I don't know, yes, absolutely. The Twerdoff and Associates Inc. I'm not sure, do we have that? Do we have that in here?
Yeah.
I don't know what their recommendation was. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
only thing I find, okay, we live fairly close to the highway, and there are days you can't even hear it. Other days, you're damn near driving through your house. So how do we define if the neighbor is off to the side, one side, on one day's day, so damn much noise? How do we regulate, okay, this is it's
When
acceptable?
we get a complaint, which we've never got from this, is when we would deal with it. Our peace officers have those little options to use that little machine that goes.
So they could shut them down on days that the noise transfer is very easy.
At 6 o'clock in the morning at my house, and you can hear the highway very readily or 11 o'clock at night. other days you just don't hear anything, right? It is you're right, absolutely, there is a transfer. Go ahead.
It's just in Alberta Transportation's permit, they have the threshold of 200 trucks before a traffic impact assessment would be required. That's a lot of trucks before they would require the TIA.
Good to know. So we have a motion on the table to accept this and move forward, but go with one recommendation of poetic licensing to Craig to change 19 to secure the site. Okay? That's good. All members are on board of what we're trying to do. See you nodding the head. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. You good?
What?
You're good?
Not that it makes a difference, but I'm opposed. I wanted to see further restrictions on the discovery.
Okay.
For offer, but
Okay, Marlene, you got that? One against everything. All right, moving forward. Or Jacinta?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I know we're deviating from protocol, but I was wondering if we could circle back to Mr. Green's application, as I had omitted to include the site plan that he had provided.
Okay,
Send it to you quickly here, if you're okay with that.
so you're gonna send it via email?
Yes.
Okay.
And I sent it to Andrew. Sorry, I thought it was in the package, but I just realized it wasn't included. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention that he had included a revised site plan, and it's been sent to you.
So this revised plan, if you can help me out, where are we at on this? This is,
Showing the second approach coming off of McDonald Drive.
but that is with the plan being given the,
Review variance, yes. So I think we'll need another revised plan showing the.
right, so this is information for that, but that, I guess, one thing that does is it solidifies the decision that I made that is where I'm at. Anybody else have any concerns or questions on this? So we'll have to get a revised site plan. Did we not get a site plan with the original application that we gave the original?
Yes, we did.
So that should still be there and be able to put forward, correct?
Well, again, it would be changed because of the access from McDonald Drive, the second approach rather. So it will be revised.
Okay, so the first application where we gave the minor variance had him coming off his own driveway, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
I see, okay, good, thank you, Andrew. Okay, and that's fair enough, so just bring back the second one and we'll go from there. I think that's very doable.
Just want to apologize for not including it in the original.
No, there you go. Okay, and then now we are Lone Pine Colony, page 32 of your package, 6.2.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose of this development permit application is to consider a discretionary use development permit for a clustered farm dwelling and associated uses, which in this case is a fourplex dwelling unit on a quarter section. The applicants are proposing to construct an additional fourplex unit, 1,240 square meters, on the northwest of 6, 3917 west of the 4th. The county's land use bylaw includes clustered farm dwellings and associated uses as a discretionary use in the agricultural district, provided the farm unit consists of a minimum of 640 acres and the occupants of the dwelling are employed by the farm operation. Further, the dwellings must be located on the same farmstead site as the principal residence. The proposed development meets all the setback requirements for the agricultural district. So we added some conditions to this. One that I'll make note of is that even though we are giving them or applying the permit to build this, they are still subject to all the safety codes, permits, fire permits, and everything. So they still have to get a building permit. It has to meet the safety code requirements. So I had that question brought to me by a couple of members of the committee, so I just wanted to make sure that was clear in there, that even though we're giving them a permit to build multiple family dwelling, it is still subject to all of the safety codes.
Again, outside our, not our monkey, not our circus, to put it as we have already, and that is, again, and with great responsibility comes, or great power comes great responsibility. Go ahead.
The footprint of that, like that should be a lot smaller by this diagram that's up here right now, because they're talking about a fourplex unit. Aren't they? These other ones are eights. I think that, you just count the sidewalks going in.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they have it broken up, but it's gonna be the twin to the one to the south of where the yellow block is. So that's what the building footprint will be.
It looks like, I think those other ones are 8 housings, their sidewalks, but.
Like an eightplex instead of a fourplex.
The county is accredited to the fire code, and so we probably would need to check.
I did forward it to, and I had a conversation with the not Mark, but Etienne.
Yeah, sure.
So that, yeah, that's fire code, not safety codes, so, and that still applies. Just like if you built a new house, whatever.
Well, this one's a little different because it's a multifamily.
Yeah.
So I did have a conversation with Etienne, and he asked for some more information, which I forwarded to him. So they didn't have any issues after that conversation.
Again, that's theirs, not ours, as far as the phone. Okay, questions, concerns? I need a motion for someone to move this forward.
I'll move forward.
Okay, Mr. Clark, nothing? Justin, go ahead.
Just a question to staff on this one. Do we have the ability to ask what their water source is going to be when they're putting up multifamily housing units?
So in the referral on this one, I did refer that information out. This colony is connected to the water line, and their wastewater system is provided through a lagoon system. So because they own so much land and their waste is made there, they're able to pump that water out once a year or whenever they need to do it onto their own land. With it, they don't need to require any other permitting or anything from Alberta Environment to be able to do that.
So because they're tied into the water line, are they committing that will be their only source of water?
I don't know if we can ask that question.
I don't know if it's possible. I know we discussed it on single dwellings about setbacks. Are you allowed to have a well there? Do you have enough room for septic? And I just want to know, do we have the same latitude for these?
I think both those questions have been asked, right? And answered that their sewer is their own lagoon, and the water is hooked up to go down the road more, I guess. I'm not sure we have that's in our wheelhouse to do that. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
So with the lagoon, is it a private lagoon or is it dumped into the community lagoon, like for the livestock? And then dispersed up in there?
No, it's in a private lagoon. I don't know if you can see it in that aerial photo, but there's one that's more zoomed out and you can see the lagoon. I think it was in the northwest corner that services just the wastewater, the human wastewater, not anything to do with the agricultural operation there.
Okay.
And it only serves the colony. It's not that no one else is connected to that system.
Okay, any concerns, questions? I'm seeing none. We have a motion on the table to accept this with conditions. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay. 6.3, page 36.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to operate an outdoor warehousing and storage facility on Lot 1, Plan 1722445, 18560 Highway 601. 14.8 acre parcel is developed with a detached dwelling and several outbuildings. The properties adjacent to Highway 601, and a roadside development permit application has been submitted to Alberta Transportation. Section 92.3 of the land use bylaw includes warehousing and storage limited to the storage of a maximum 20 recreational vehicles and 20 self-storage units as a discretionary use within agricultural land use district. The applicant is requesting a variance to the maximum units in order to accommodate approximately 60 units in the designated storage area shown on the site plan. The reason he's requesting that variance is he feels that 20 units is not very enough to make his, operation basically,
Okay.
it just, it's more or less the
Any
more
questions,
valuable.
concerns that we've got page 36 of this, but I've got the pictures on page 39 is where I'm looking at anybody want to move? Go ahead, Larry.
Question on them, is with one like this, when you go from 20 to 60 units, when does this become a commercial venture versus agriculture?
As far as taxes,
Yes, exactly, and, then permits on RVs, et cetera, for, it's.
as long as nobody's sleeping in them, I guess you can store them, but what do I agree with you as far as when do you become a,
That's from a viability piece, it states right in within the application, it's the reason you have to go from 60 to 20, or from 20 to 60 is for viability, so it looks to me like it's more of a commercial venture.
In that case, you would rezone the property to like a highway commercial property with the residents. Because in the highway commercial district, there isn't a cap on the amount of units that can be stored. It's specific to the agricultural district, so he just finds it's more cost effective to have more units. And that's why he brought that forward, that it'd be extended to allow additional units.
okay, I'm still looking for a motion or some sort of direction from the board, unless you don't want to deal with it, and I'll just move on, and then we need some direction. Go ahead, Mr. Paul.
I don't know which direction to make the motion. I'm going to make the motion, but as Councillor Clark had pointed out, are we getting into a bigger proposal than what we do? I know he's already got a storage unit out there. What is this going to be, a commercial product down the line?
So
Or
he's storing some trailers already?
I've got a sign right out, you take a few pictures over, and there's a storage sign there that he's had all last year, and nothing was there that I can tell you that was put there last year, but yet he's trying to expand it to a bigger business. Maybe he didn't have enough land, but it looks to me like he's trying to turn this into commercial, not agricultural.
So what is your motion?
I would move that we decline it, just until we get clarification on what this is, commercial or agricultural part.
Well, I would say it is discretionary in the agricultural use
Right.
district. Okay, so I have a motion on the table that we deny this application. Go ahead. Who might?
I thought Craig.
I'm okay, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you don't care?
I'll interject if need be. That's all.
Oh, okay.
I kind of agree with Board Member Clark that part of the benefit of this rezoning, we're calling a spade a spade. Yeah, it's discretionary if it's 20, but we're talking triple that, which is substantial. But the other thing this rezoning does, we get all this pushback time and time again about not allowing public feedback. But part of what that process of rezoning is, it does allow some public input. So if we're going to rezone something and we're going to allow commercial, giving them one opportunity before we make the decision isn't the worst thing in the world.
I guess the only thing that I would say, I'm not 100% sure I know what the difference between 20 and 60 are other than what he's making. And it seems to me that both are, I mean, we're being, at 20, I think we're being fairly liberal already. I'm not, I mean, if you wanted to have an acre out back and throw a few trailers on it and charge your buddies for it, I think that's kind of where we're at. But if you're going to turn it into a full out RV site, so, and in the fairness of competition as well, are there other places that are commercially operated right now that are using RV storage? In the county of Stellar, Simon's RV, they do storage, right?
Yes, you do.
And
Business.
and then there's one up on the lake. It was
Just off 835.
835, and I think I highly either one of them are not full. I know Heartland Marine is another opportunity that you can do. So now where you're going is you're really okaying a backyard storage of this. Go ahead, Mr. Ginger.
If we okay it, will not the taxman find it for assessment?
I don't think so because it's not a land use change, is it?
Yeah, your zoning does not affect your taxes. So if it's a commercial use on an agricultural parcel, it should be assessed as commercial.
Okay, so that answers our tax issue. So what's the difference whether he's there with 60 or 20? It's, yeah, he'll get taxed on it. So I guess that is where you're at. Are you still okay with not going down there or going down there?
Well, yeah, now that there's some clarification, I can change that to accept it.
Okay.
I do want to look at a few things, if you don't mind, on this before we go to.
No.
If we could take a look at the exact wording of the discretionary use. Yeah, which I think Andrew's trying to find on the screen for us. So, okay, so there it is at the very bottom of the second page, the box, discretionary use, warehouse and storage, limited to the storage of a maximum of 20 recreational vehicles and 20 self-storage units. And I think I heard you said to say earlier, a similar use appears in a different district with no cap. So whenever you see a land use bylaw structured like that, that's an attempt to limit variance power by saying the use up to this threshold is allowed, and MPC cannot vary use. You can vary a standard, but in this case, the way it's structured and built in the land use bylaw, it's not a standard provision, it's a use provision. It says council is prepared to see up to this threshold of this type of activity, and after that, you have to get into another district.
I would blame council on this. That's whose fault it is. I like that idea, Craig. I like that.
It is a common tool, and it is a way to trigger that same thing of, we're okay with the first 5, which is I'm pulling that number out of that. But after that, we think you're big and maybe you should be scrutinized differently, or we're going to be more selective with what we allow you. So you will see other uses in your land use bylaw that are structured along the same way, and the difference between is making sure that you're not dealing with use provision, because your variance power does not allow you to deviate a use provision.
Okay, so we got our answers on that. This is, even if it was to be challenged, we would probably lose this in an appeal, right? So we really can't push this forward. So I think we have our answer to put forward a motion to deny it, actually. I think Paul has put 2 motions forward, but now that we have more information, I would think that with motion going forward, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm just saying I think this should be a motion to deny this, and unfortunately, I don't think we have much choice but to go that direction. Go ahead, Jacinta.
And we consider an application for the 20 units, 20 RVs and 20 storage units, or be that, I know they proposed 60.
But I think that's a different application, and he would have to bring that back.
Sorry, actually, Mr. Chair, that actually would be within the purview of the committee. Your option, yeah, you can refuse it based on it not being consistent with the use provision, or you can apply a condition that brings them in line with what's allowed in the bylaw, which means reducing.
Fair enough. Okay, good. That I like this. We rounded this corner very nicely. Okay, now it took us a little while to get there, but we have now a motion on the table to approve 20 units and 20 storage units. And if he decides to go forward with that, that's his decision. If he decides not to, he can make an application to change his land use bylaw and then go with it. At that point, it's right his decision. So is all the board members clear? I'm seeing one nod. Ernie's still sleeping. Mr. Clark is on board. Yes, we understand where we're at. I will call that. Go ahead,
He
Ernie.
has to come back and we have to change the
No,
bylaws.
that's what, if he wants to go over and above the 20 units and the 20 storage units.
Then we would have to
Own
change.
the property.
No, he would have to rezone his land to make it commercial or whatever.
I'm awake, let's go.
There you go. Arlene, are you caught up to our craziness?
Everything, the whole motion will stay the same except the numbers change.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will make the motion to allow 20 units and 20 storage units, 20 RV units. Okay, all those in favor? That was easy. Okay. Moving on. 6.4, page 43 of your package.
Applicant is proposing to construct a 30 by 50 ancillary building encompassing a 600 square foot dwelling unit on an 8.16 acre parcel on the northeast of 93818 west of the 4th. The parcel is developed with a detached dwelling and several outbuildings. Section 92(3) of the county's land use bylaw provides for a second dwelling or manufactured home on a parcel of land less than 80 acres as a discretionary use in agricultural district. Section 44(1) of the county's land use bylaw stipulates a development permit application that proposes to encompass or attach a dwelling unit to an ancillary building or farm building shall be referred to the Municipal Planning Commission for their consideration. The applicant is proposing to construct a second dwelling on that parcel, subject to the conditions.
All right. Anybody out there want to move this forward? Mr. Clark?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, anybody have any questions or concerns?
I have a question.
Okay, or a concern?
The total amount, like, we start looking at that listing of what we have for residents or potential residents on this property. Where is the limit on that?
So there are two dwellings, the existing house and the second dwelling unit would be inside the new building.
Oh, okay, okay.
There's two dwellings, but there's multiple outbuildings.
And there was a spot that showed a modular home, that is the existing dwelling.
Not a modular, it's a two-story home.
Okay.
There is a better site plan, I'm hoping, down further. Just shows more clearer the actual site with the proposed location of the dwelling. And then the existing dwelling is right where you see the circular laneway. So,
Right there, okay, no, I'm fine with that.
We're good? Okay, any other questions or concerns going on there?
Either building it in a grill, but that's their choice.
Yeah, I think they're building a, what do you call it, a shop and put a house in it, which
Yeah,
I'm,
accommodation.
it might be the first person that's actually told us they're doing it. Thank you, no, we should send them a thing.
You know, some of the.
No, I'm serious, I mean, I think we should send them a thing, so all those in favor, that is carried. Okay. All right, we gotta have a little bit of fun doing this. So we got 6.5, 6.6, 7.172 done, so now we're on new business, referral. 8.1 and 98, number 1 in your heart, number 98 on your back.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've received several referrals from Red Deer County. One of them is just for the rezoning of parcel from the Ag District to a medium industrial, business service, and a public utility district. So purpose of the bylaw is to facilitate future subdivision in order to create 5 lots for commercial and industrial use. The public hearing is,
Can I ask the question of why we got this?
I received it, so I forwarded it on to you,
It is Penhold, right?
area.
Hoping we didn't accidentally get penalties. What's that? Hope you accidentally didn't get that.
Yeah, we didn't get nailed somebody that,
I don't know, I feel like,
Email, so I just forwarded on. I know you like to
I'm
see.
gonna just receive this one for information. I will even make the motion, Marlene, to move us forward. All those in favor? Typically, we don't do that as a chair, but. Okay, 107.
And this is also another referral from Red Deer County for their land use bylaw updates. They're adding the data processing facilities, electrical vehicle charging stations, a hydrovac waste disposal, wedding venues, roadside advertising signs, and private camping on ag land up to 3 units. I think that is an interesting one for us because we do have that happening all around the county, so that's something we might want to look at. And they've kind of summarized it in this one sheet, which is,
Is there anything we can rob and duplicate?
maybe we'll have electrical vehicle chargers for Andrew's vehicle. Somewhere in the,
motion to move on here, Mr. Receive for information, Mr. Clark. All those in favor? If one thing, it is good to go through those to find out if we've got anything that we can rob and duplicate for sure. White Sands, 8.3, 110.
Chairman, so the Summer Village has referred this application for our consideration, and it is to create 2 parcels of 0.61 acres for each parcel. And that is, I provided a map to show you where it is and reflect. It's right beside our roadway, just at kitty corner. So the Summer Village had provided a letter in June 20th, 2022, which broke down their existing development units, because that was a concern in previous referrals. So the total that they've provided is 436 units, and their total unit capacity, as defined in the Buffalo Lake IDP, is 505 units. So they just put that information in.
That's, and continue to do that. I think that's a go forward. That's good information for us. Mr. Stevens?
I would like to get clarification that the approach or access would be from the north side. I think that's called Irma's Way. I think we start adding the approaches to our roadway, then I think it changes the structure of this referral a bit. I suspect they want to use Irma's Way, but it'd be nice to get that.
Can we get that clarification? So
We
we're
can add
making
that.
that a motion that we have one question, and that is to have the lot A and B that the approaches are coming from.
Internal road.
Internal road, right? Yeah. And then you can bring that back to the next meeting. Any other questions or concerns on this? Justin, you want to make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Marlene, do you get what he's putting down? Excellent. All those in favor? Cool.
I just want to clarify, do you want it brought back, or do you want that, the referral letter comments to include that it?
To send it back, and then when that information comes back, that we have follow-up on it, okay? So.
I mean, if they're,
We won't hold it up. If that's happening, that's fine. We have no problems with it as long as those approaches are coming off the north.
if the answer is yes, we're using our internal roads, then everyone here is satisfied.
Yeah, but if they're gonna use our roads, then we have serious concerns.
Because there's, where that curve is actually the water station.
Yeah.
That,
That's what my concern was.
the boundary is a retaining wall access, it completely changes.
Yeah.
So if they're coming from the north, I'm happy.
And that would be under the whole geist of if it was off a highway or anything like that. Okay, we'll have a vote on it. We're all in favor of that? That is carried. Okay. Green, we did. Sherman, old business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the landowner of Lot 15, Block 2, Plan 0620307, submitted a development permit application on June 8 to provide for the use of a 1993 Jayco recreational vehicle as a dwelling unit within the resort residential Community Service Land Use District. Pursuant to section 110.14(2), a discretionary use development permit may be issued to use a recreational vehicle within Erosion's Hands subdivision for a maximum 2-year period. The landowner may reapply for a new permit once the 2 years have lapsed. The development officer issued a notice of decision approving the use of a recreational vehicle on the subject property, which was circulated to the landowner and adjacent landowners on June the 14th. Development permit was issued once the appeal period lapsed on July 4th. A condition of the development permit requires that the replacement of the 30-year-old recreational vehicle with a unit less than 15 years old by September 30th, 2022. The landowner contacted the county requesting approval to leave the 1993 JACO on site until the development permit expires on June the 15th, 2024. The landowner indicated she intended to construct a dwelling on the property within the next 2 years, therefore does not want to replace the unit. Administration is bringing forward the landowner's request to the Municipal Planning Commission for consideration and direction. So there are some photos of the RV, from different views from the street as well as from the lake side of the property.
So is the pagoda, I don't know what you call it, maybe a pagoda, is that kosher?
It's way different than Mr. Chairman. Pergola. Closer to what you're.
Octagon, not octagon?
I don't think that's a kubota. I think that's a mass.
Wait, so is the covered deck kosher?
That was approved several years ago, and I can't recall the year, but it was approved.
Memory serves, it's allowed as long as the trailer is there.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought is how this was dealt with in the past. It's an allowable ancillary use if you have that trailer there as a primary.
But this trailer is now aged out. This one I'm having a little trouble with because this trailer is actually not ugly. For the most part, it's fairly well maintained. But the rules state that, I hate to tell them that they have to update it for 2 years and then turn around and do it. I don't know.
Well, we do ask for pictures because we want to see what it looks like, and it does. Your first thought process when you hear 30 years versus what you actually see is two different,
So that's it.
Yeah.
So what's the board's thought pattern here before we go ahead and make the motion? I just want a quick straw poll. Where are you at on it, Mr. Chen?
We've done the same thing for the older.
Okay. Mr. McKay?
Yeah, we can't hold a knife to his throat saying that you gotta put a new one in when it looks like this condition. It looks within 10 years, in my opinion. And I don't think we should hold it back unless we want to tell him he's got to build tomorrow instead of 2 years.
I guess the one point I'd like to get across to them though is don't be back in 2 years with the same request.
Well, so you go ahead and then I'll talk tonight.
So I kind of agree. I do not want to be an HOA. I do not want to be the aesthetics police. The condition looks good. Whether it matches my preferred color scheme, I am not, like, this is so subjective. I do not want to open up that can of worms. But we've approved it up. Everything's acceptable except the age. So if they're coming, asking for some tolerance because they want to dump that capital towards building in the next 2 years, I mean, I think that's everyone's end goal. I mean, this seems like minimal pain for maximum gain for the community.
Yeah, I agree. I'd be willing to do a 2-year extension on that one, and like, really, I wish we never would allow them in there in the first place in the residential area, but we have, so I agree. It doesn't look that ancient, so
So,
give them the two.
so one of the things that I would suggest, I think, since it takes us 13 months to get a stop work order to compliance, I mean, really, we should start the stop work order, and I say that facetiously. But is there a way that we can approve it with the condition that we see a development permit within the next 6 to 12 months? Go ahead, Jacinta.
We have a development permit, and if approved, this would be allowed on the site.
A development permit for a new
A
house.
new house, oh, I understand.
Yeah, I want there to be, and I feel that I'm getting from the board that we're okay with this for the next 2 years as long as they move forward, but I would like to see, and I don't want them to come back 2 years from now and we have to be the bad guy at that time. I want to see some commitment on their side to say, I will commit to bringing so what I would like to see is maybe we allow it for 1 year extension, and then we bring this back in a year if they haven't, but should by that time bring forward a development permit for a new house. Is that something we can do, Mr.?
Mr. Chair, I'm glad you're able to answer the question in principle today.
Yeah.
You, as a group, do not get to reopen the development permit that's already been issued.
Yeah.
The only way to set that aside is to have another development permit brought in and processed. So it's almost like a two-stage process. If the panel is, or the board is prepared to say, okay, we'll modify our original condition, or we're prepared to take a different approach next time on condition number 6, and not tell you to remove the JCO on September 2022, you need a development permit to issue a new condition. You could also give a different life for that in anticipation of the third permit, which you're hoping is going to be for a on-site detached dwelling or a very good looking modular home.
Okay, so what we would have to do is, in principle, we will approve this and ask them to bring a new development permit forward. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, is that what everybody understands? Okay, so I'd like to get that motion that we will approve in principle with a new application coming forward.
For 1 year then?
Well, they'll bring forward an application, we can make that decision then. And then at that point, we could put the condition that we will approve it for 2 years as long as we see a development permit within. Okay, is that fair?
It'll need a little bit of work, but I hope you see a development permit follow up by October.
Yeah, so what happens, the permit, or the RVs at, all the subdivisions can be approved by a development officer, subject to the 21-day appeal period. So we had approved this, subject to that condition. So I don't know if it needs to come back to the board, if we're just varying now, allowing this.
Well, the variance that you're gonna have on here is this trailer's too old, so it does have to come back to the board, I think.
So again, once you've issued a decision in writing, you've done your job. The legal term would be functus, you're done. If you want to overturn or change that decision, you have to process a new development permit. You don't get to reopen it and amend it even 2 days later.
Yeah, we can approve this one. But what Jacinta's saying is, at the staff level, they are
You'd be able to process. and deal
but
with
we
it.
would like to see that one come back for the reason
Yes.
that this is.
Okay, that's clear. I just wasn't sure if we wanted it back here or whether. So we will.
Okay, can I get a motion to that effect, that we, in principle,
I will give you that motion.
accept this with a new application coming forward? Does that sound kosher? Okay. Everybody understands what we're doing? All those in favor? That's carried. Any in-camera session?
Yes.
Everybody here is here?
Yeah.
Okay. We don't see it on the Questions, concerns? All those in favor? Okay, and next meeting? What's that?
October 26th.
October 26th, we're good? Everybody's good with that? You know? Don't blame staff if you don't know. Who's up for the next motion? Oh, there we go, Les.
Adjourn.
All those in favor? Thank you.